I'm now excited to introduce one of my favorite people, Deborah Ziegler, our Director of Policy and Advocacy for CEC.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar regarding the Special Education Legislative Summit. A shout out to all of you for registering. We're very excited to be hosting this event in collaboration with the Council of Administrators of Special Education. And I want to give you some basic information about where we are as of today. This is a SELS data report you'll see. We have actually, it's gone up this afternoon. It's showing 230 registered. I think we have about 10 more. So we're approaching almost 250, which will far exceed the numbers that we had last year. So we're very, very excited about that. It will have a huge footprint on the Hill in July. We have 44 states represented and the District of Columbia, and we're working with the 6 additional states not represented. And we hope that we will have every state in the union coming to the Legislative Summit meeting in July. We have a picture of our bus for SELS time here. As you know, we will be taking a bus to the Hill on Tuesday morning, and we'll tell you more about that as we proceed. But the number is 165 individuals have purchased a bus ticket to date. There still are bus tickets, and we would encourage you to buy a bus ticket, and you can go back to our customer service or go back online and order your bus ticket. The price is $10. I know some of you may have some early morning appointments and may go by taxi, but for those who have not purchased a bus ticket yet, we would encourage you to do so. It's the best way and the cheapest way for you to get to the Hill. But more on that in a few minutes as we move forward. All right, next slide, please. So the next slide is about our social events. We're featuring the Capitol Steps program on Saturday, July 7th. It's down in the Ronald Reagan building in Washington, D.C. I know many of you have registered. Some of you may not be in on Saturday night. As you know, preceding the Special Education Legislative Summit is our CEC leadership meeting, and there will be many people, including the CAN coordinators, who will be at the leadership, as well as many of our CEC leaders who will also be attending SELS. So for those of you who are in town on Saturday night, we encourage you to join us at the Capitol Steps. I'm sure it will be as funny as it is every year. And then the second social event is Monuments by Water. And it's a cruise down the Potomac past many of the monuments, and that's Tuesday night, July 10th. Registration for both of these events closes on June 27th. So please, if you're interested, call through our customer services representatives, or you can go online and order your tickets. There's more information up on our web. Next slide, please. All right, so how will you gain information over the next couple of weeks about the Special Education Legislative Summit? There are 3 bullets here. First of all, we have the SELS website, and you can get to that very easily right through CEC's website, and you have the address here. This is where you'll find everything about SELS, more than you'd ever want to know. And just to give you a quick preview, we'll have, right now we have the summit speakers, bios on the web. We also have the draft legislative summit agenda. We have the state team leader list. We'll have information on how to tweet your members of Congress. We'll have actual sample tweets for you to use during the week. Information on requesting a congressional meeting. Later on in the month, we will be posting the issue briefs. These are the talking points that you'll be taking to the Hill on a variety of issues. We'll also be talking about legislative recommendations. Eventually, all of the PowerPoint presentations will be on the website as well. There'll be no handouts given out per se at the meeting, but you will receive a booklet with all of the issue briefs in it and some of the major forms that we will be using. There's tips for congressional meetings. There's a lot of good resources around getting around on Capitol Hill, information on the social events, and then following up after the summit, thank you letters and debriefing forms. So if you haven't had an opportunity, please go up on the SELS website and browse around. I think you'll find a lot of helpful information there. We also will be doing a SELS weekly email. As you know, we sent our first one last Wednesday, and we each week will feature a variety of new resources and new information for you so that we're not overwhelming you in 1 week with all of the information. And the weekly email will give you resources about the next conference call, or I'm sorry, not the conference call, the webinars that we'll be having every week. So tomorrow we will be sending you the second weekly email, and it will have information about the webinar for next week, as well as some other helpful resources. The SELS webinars, this is of course our first one, as you know. We'll have one each week throughout the next 3 weeks, so 4 in total, and each week will feature different issues and topics to help acquaint you ahead of time with everything you need to know about the Special Education Legislative Summit. All right, so this slide shows all of the state team leaders as of June 13th. We think that we have most people in place. As an example, one individual had to is not able to attend the SELS meeting and told us that yesterday, so we had to find a new state leader for that particular state. But I think for the most part, everybody's in place unless somebody cancels and is not able to come to the SELS meeting. And if we have one of the 6 states that's not up here that joins us, we'll include their name. The state leader is the individual who will keep the state team moving along and setting up meetings, will help lead and facilitate the discussions during the Special Education Legislative Summit. Most of these individuals are seasoned SEL attendees. They may be, from some states, they are CAN coordinators, our Children and Youth Action Network coordinators. From other states, there are seasoned case members who have been longtime SELS attendees. And in other cases, like I'll give an example, our Delaware, Lisa Lawson there, she's the lone member coming from Delaware. We hope she brings some friends, but she is the state leader and the one participant from Delaware. And there are a few states like that, but most states have multiple people. So this list is also on the website, on the SELS website, and we'll update it regularly. You'll also find it on the Google Docs, which we'll get to in a few minutes. All right, so we have a Capitol Hill Congressional Appointments Google Docs database. I hope many of you have had the opportunity to go into the Google Docs database, and if you haven't, I would encourage you to do that immediately after this phone call or sometime tonight to become acquainted with what's in the Google Docs for your reference. So let's take a look at some of the key components of the Capitol Hill Congressional Appointments Google Docs database. It seems complicated, but it's very, very easy to use. So when you open, you'll see this colorful bar at the top, and you'll see that we have several categories. So between now and when we gather together in July, we hope that each state team will have this information filled in. So the congressional office that you're going to visit, I'll give Virginia as an example. It's my home state. So we would have, as an example, Senator Tim Kaine. Who who are you meeting with? So if it's the actual member of Congress themselves, you would put that person's name there. It might be the education legislative assistant or another staffer. We'd like to know whether the member is actually confirmed to be present at the meeting. Of course, the date of the appointment. There are occasions where a member may not be available on a Tuesday, but they'll say, you know, the member would like to meet with you on Wednesday morning or Monday afternoon. And so we've had a few people who've had to run out of the SELS meeting for a quick trip to the Hill to meet with one of their members. I'm happy to talk with you about any of those aberrations from the Tuesday schedule. The time of the appointment, the location of the appointment, the name and the email of the CEC member who scheduled the appointment, and then you'll list all of the people attending this appointment from your state team and any pertinent notes that you might have. At the bottom of the sheet, you'll see across from left to right, every state tab. So all you do is link onto your state tab and it will open up your state database. So let's go to the actual database itself. So I have to give a real huge shout out to Illinois. You'll see that they have filled in many of the components and the boxes here. They're well on their way to scheduling some meetings. So let's look at what they've done here. I want to take you to the state team participants at the bottom left-hand corner. So for Illinois, you have all of the team participants as well as their email addresses. And you'll see here that we have two co-state team leaders, Kevin Rubenstein and Timothy Carroll. Some on the right-hand side have listed their House of Representatives member as well as their congressional district. So if there are any other folks from Illinois on the call, on the webinar right now, we would encourage you to list your representatives. So in this particular instance, we have two participants who have Mike Bost as their representative. So they'll want to try to coordinate a visit together, as well as for Congressional District 6 for Peter Roskam. So this is helpful information as you begin setting up your appointments. The entire state team will visit both of their Senate offices, and then you will divide up to visit with your House of Representative offices, depending on your congressional district. And this is a work in progress, as you can tell. And you'll see, for instance, now let's go to the top. You'll see Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Tammy Duckworth. There is an appointment made with Senator Durbin's office, and you can see all the information on the top line. And you can see that Kevin Rubenstein has filled in all Illinois team members. And then if you go down to the third line, you'll see that there's been also a House of Representatives appointment made, and it lists the members that will be attending those meetings. We recommend that the team together decide how to schedule these meetings. We generally recommend that you try to set up your Senate meetings in the morning and your House of Representative meetings in the afternoon. That doesn't always work, but it allows for easier scheduling. Of course, when you call a member's office or email them, you might find that the member may only be available in the morning or the afternoon, and so we would encourage you to take whatever visit you can get. But it generally has seemed to work better if you agree either to do all the Senate visits in the morning or afternoon, and then you're also not moving back and forth multiple times from the House to the Senate side, although sometimes that will happen just because of the time that members or their staffers are available. I would encourage you to remain as flexible as possible, and that will yield the biggest number of appointments. All right, let's move to the next slide. All right, tips for setting up your congressional appointments. you can go to CEC's Legislative Action Center and get to know your members of Congress. And we've done a screenshot right here of the Legislative Action Center, and this allows you to find your elected officials. So if you look at the box on the right-hand side, it says find your elected officials. I've entered in here my zip code, and you click on the go, and it will take you immediately to your elected officials. So here are my elected officials in Virginia. Get the president, the vice president, your 2 senators, and your representative. You'll also get some of your local state folks, your governor and so forth. So I didn't put all of those on here. So you want to get to know them. And if you would to click on, for instance, Tim Kaine's profile, you'll go and find everything you want to know about Tim Kaine, information about how to contact their office, some of the staff people, some of the committees that the senator serves on, etc. So if you're not familiar with your senators or your representatives, I'd encourage you to spend a few minutes on the Legislative Action Center looking at this information and becoming acquainted with your members of Congress. Okay, next slide. So tips for setting up the congressional appointments. There is a tip sheet on the resources page of the SELS website that gives you a lot of information about setting up congressional appointments. You want to call the member's office, identify their telephone number, fax number, and email of the scheduler and the education legislative assistant if you don't already know. Email, fax, call the scheduler with a request. I always recommend that you put it in writing and follow up with a call. You want to follow up within a few days to a week if you haven't heard back from them. Remember, these offices are very busy. They're getting lots of calls and requests for appointments. If the member of Congress is not available, you want to ask for an appointment with the education legislative assistant. And then, of course, you want to let them know you'll be bringing a state team and approximately how many people will be coming. Some of our teams are bigger than others. Illinois, as you saw, had a pretty big team. Our bigger states have large teams, but I think our largest team last year had over 20 people. And so if you're going to bring 20 people into a member's office, they'll certainly want to know about that. It's not a problem, but we just have to make sure that they're aware it will be what the size of the team will be. And number 6 says persevere. I'd also add on to that, again, to be flexible. Sometimes it's not until the midnight hour that you hear back from your member. You can come to Washington and still not have an appointment, and that Monday, it's still not too late to be following up and securing that appointment. And certainly if you need any help or you have any concerns, I'm pleased to help you. You can send me an email or call me, and we can kind of walk through whatever the issue may be together. Okay, next slide. All right, so we have the pre-summit webinars here for the rest of the month of June and into the 1st of July. So you can see the webinar topics that we reviewed today. On June 20th, which is next Wednesday, we'll be meeting at the same time. We'll be looking at our issue briefs, our legislative recommendations, preparing data for Hill's visits, and developing stories for Hill visits. The following week, we'll be talking about conducting a successful congressional meeting, what you're going to do the day you're on the Hill on Tuesday. And then on July 5th, right before the summit, we'll be talking about summit logistics, the Capitol Hill debriefing forum, and any other last minute resources or issues you may need to have information about. Remember, you need to register for each of the 4 webinars. It's very easy, as you know. It only takes you a few minutes. We would encourage you also to let any of your team members who weren't able to join today that these will be archived on our SELS website. There will be a tab for webinars, and each of these 4 webinars will be available to review at any point in time through our SELS website. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Let's look in the chat box to see if we have any questions. Megan, do you want to?
Yep, so I'll give you guys just a minute to enter your questions. As I mentioned before, you're on mute, so feel free to type those in the chat box. As Deb said, we will be recording and archiving this webinar, so feel free to share that with members of your state team who may not have been able to join us today. And you'll receive those really helpful weekly registrant emails that will give you all kinds of great information on all the topics. Those will include links to register for the other webinars and information about how you can access all the resources on the Special Education Legislative Summit website. I know that's a mouthful, but I'll give you guys just another minute to type questions in.
While we're waiting for any questions, I also want to give a quick shout out to Kentucky, Minnesota, and North Dakota, who also have appointments entered in the database. And I know many of you are working on your appointments. As I've talked to many of you, you've called me or emailed me asking questions. As soon as you can populate those, the Google Docs with your appointments, the better to keep your team informed. If you have not heard from your team leader, give it a day or two, maybe the beginning of next week. There are still people registering, so for those of you who are team leaders, you'll want to look at that list of state team members and make sure that you include the new members into the discussions. Most of the teams are communicating by email, and that's led through the state team leader. If, again, you haven't heard from your state team leader, certainly reach out to them. You have their email address, or if I can help in any way, I'd be happy to do that as well. It's the end of the school year for many still, so I know how busy all of you are right now. And sometimes the SELS meeting is not the first thing on everybody's agenda.
Okay, so we got a couple.
I don't see any questions.
We've got a couple that came in on my end. So this one's from John.
Okay.
You have to fill out any forms to get in to visit Congress people, like background checks or anything like that?
Yeah, good question, thanks. No, there's no forms to fill out, but what you will have to do is go through security, which is very similar to the security that you go through at an airport. So there are restricted items that, of course, you can't bring to Capitol Hill, and we'll review those during our meeting. On Sunday night, we go through a lot of the logistics of what to bring and not to bring on Capitol Hill, but no special forms to be filled out.
Okay, and then what about for folks who may be coming in from the West Coast and might get in later on Sunday? If they miss the beginning part of the activities on Sunday evening, will they get that information some other way? Is this where those handy dandy notebooks come into play?
Yeah, so everybody will have a booklet of all of the information. We actually have 2 keynotes on Sunday night. We'll review the whole draft agenda next week on our webinar. It's also posted to our website, so I would encourage you to take a look at it. What we do is we review or introduce the talking points. There are 4 issues that we're going to address this year, and we'll review those on Sunday night, but we'll spend all day Monday reviewing them until everybody's comfortable and hopefully has all the information that they need to go up on Capitol Hill. And certainly you'll be able to rely on your team members. So if you aren't there on Sunday night or you miss part of Sunday night, there are ways in which you can capture that information. I would encourage you to be there on Sunday, though, because we have 2 great keynoters, and So if you can make it in for the late afternoon, that would be the preference.
It looks like that's all the questions we have. I did see one other one about finding these archived recordings. They will be up on the website within a couple days after they air. So this one will be up tomorrow or early next week at the latest. And that'll be, I believe, under the resources section, but they will be easily accessible for you and your team members to review. All right, Deb, that's all the questions I've got.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're looking forward to having you all in Washington, D.C. This is an important year for us. We have many, many critical issues that are in front of the field. And so every voice is going to make a difference. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll talk to you again next week. Bye now.